Yang, President Trump called his first appearance at ASEAN tremendously successful. Joining me more to talk about this is Joseph Pelzman, Professor of Economics and International Affairs at Georgetown University here in Washington. Welcome, Professor. George Washington. Welcome to the program, sir. What do you make of how this trip went? He says it was successful. He says he met a lot of friends in high places. But was anything of substance really accomplished here?
Not yet. In other words,
well,
basically, well, it's not over yet. But he set up the agenda for bilateral agreements, basically. I mean, the whole big elephant in the room, if you want, is this idea that we're moving away from multilateralism to bilateralism. His buzzword is reciprocity. It's the same kind of buzzword you heard a long time ago under Ronald Reagan. And that's what he's doing. He's basically going, let's make a deal, it's bilateral. We look at market access problems that you have in your country, we have, and we can do a win-win proposition, not multilateralism.
I'm not sure what you mean, though, by it's not over. I mean, the ASEAN gathering is over, and he's on his way back to the United States.
It's just the beginning. In other words, what is waiting for, in terms of agenda for him, is to set up a series of bilateral negotiations within these countries. The fact that he's out of TPP doesn't mean he's out of Asia. It just means he doesn't like a multilateral deal. So he was setting up the environment for a series of bilateral deals, which will take years to negotiate. The Chinese is the biggest. Japan is another one, which is very, very large. But all of the other Asian economies have difficulty in terms of market access. And that's what he's after. He's after market access.
There was a phrase that we heard over and over again from President Trump referring to the region as Indo-Pacific, not Asia-Pacific.
Right.
Explain to us what he's talking about here.
It would be nice to know what he's talking about. I have no clue what he's talking about, other than India is there.
Take a wild guess.
No, I mean, basically, this is a part of the world that's growing very, very quickly. It's a part of the world where there are issues specific to U.S., intellectual property laws, selling beef and chicken and whatever else. And so to understand
India is going to be a bigger player in the region?
He thinks. But the predictions that India was going to be a larger player than China that were made 10 years ago were wrong, and they're still wrong. But I mean, the words he comes up with, I have no clue what he's talking about. But the bottom line is he needs a bilateral deal with these countries. There are specific regulations in each of these countries that are not transparent, and he wants to negotiate them away. And so that's reasonable. His argument that I want reciprocity is a buzzword saying, I win, you win. It's the winning that matters, not the size of the balance of trade, which is the way the newspapers pick it up as bilateral balancing. It has nothing to do with bilateral balancing. It has to do with winning, winning. And
we saw a lot of focus, as you mentioned, on trade, the economy, less on human rights and regional conflicts.
Right.
This is certainly a departure from past U.S. administrations.
Absolutely. I mean, he's not Obama.
I think he definitely wants not to do anything Obama has ever done.
Right. I mean, human rights is not one of his issues. His issue is jobs and market access. The level of intervention in order to prop up, democracies or non-democracies is not in his bailiwick. I mean, he doesn't really care. There's no ideology there.
And what do you believe, Professor, leaders in Asia, whether Japan, South Korea, China, Vietnam, the Philippines, what did these leaders want to hear from President Trump, and did he deliver?
They want to hear that he's not outside of the game. In other words, the reporting that comes out in the press is that somehow he's abandoned the WTO and he's out of the international community. It's not true at all. I mean, there are problems with the WTO that the United States has. There are problems that the Europeans have. There are problems that third world countries have with the WTO because it's slow and it's diplomatic. But he's not out of the game. He's just modified the game so that it's strictly bilateral. And that's a throwback to the old days because we bought into the idea of multilateralism, both in the GATT and in the Uruguay round, and he's backed off. He says, I get more out of bilateral deals, which is true.
We'll see what happens. Professor Joseph Pelzman, thank you so much.
You're welcome.